In section 4.3, we're going to look at the concept of simple interest. Typically, if you borrow money from an organization or if you invest money, the amount that you invest and depending upon how long it's left in is credited what we call interest at a certain rate. So interest is a fee that is charged for the use of money if you're lending it. If you're investing it, then interest would be the amount of money that you would earn and would be credited and added to your account. Under a simple interest scheme, the interest is a one-time percent of an amount of money. We will see in the next section that compound interest is a percentage of an original amount as well as a percentage of the new amount, including previously calculated interest. But if the interest is only calculated once over the life of the loan, then it's referred to as simple interest. The key ingredients that we are going to be dealing with are obviously interest. This is going to be the fee. We're going to use the variable I for that. P denotes what's called the principal. That is the amount that is borrowed or placed into the account. So you can think of that as kind of like your initial amount. R is a rate. Typically, rates are stated in terms of percentages, but we know from the previous section that if we're going to use that in a calculation, any percentage would need to be changed to a decimal first. And typically, the rates we'll be working with will be annual rates. So it should be percent per year. For us, time, we'll use the variable t, and because we're going to use a rate that's in years, we will also require that our time be expressed in terms of years too. And then the future amount of the loan, we're going to denote that with the variable a. This is the amount of the loan investment plus the interest paid or earned for the account. Let's take a look at an example. Let's suppose that we're going to open an account and we're going to deposit $500 into the account. And we're told that it earns 4% simple interest. So that means at the end of the first year, we will have an additional 4% of our principal, 4% of 500 will be the interest earned and credited to the account. Let's figure out how much that would be. So it's percent of, like we did from before. I need to change the 4% to a decimal, slide it 2 places to the left. That's going to become 0.04. Of means multiply times 500, and that would give us $20. So we would earn $20 in interest after that first year. Okay. The question says how much would be earned in 5 years, and then what about in an unknown number of years t? Okay. Well, let's think about part B here. We know that at the end of the first year, we're going to have what? $20. And if we leave it in for t years, then that's just simply going to be $20 times the number of years earned. So if we let it in for t years, the total interest we would earn would be 20 times t. And this brings us to the formula for simple interest. If money is computed according to simple interest, the formula is I equals the principal times the rate times the time. So I equals PRT. Again, it's important that if you're using the rate, you need to write it as a decimal when you plug it into this formula, and T also has to be in years. If you want to find out what is the future amount of either the investment or what is the future amount of the loan, then that's found by simply taking the principal, which is the starting amount, and adding to it the interest. Another way that we can rewrite this formula, just kind of looking ahead a little bit, we know what I is equal to. I is equal to PRT. So we could also write the future amount as P plus PRT, or as they have it written here, kind of like a reverse distribution. This is what we call factoring. We can pull out that common factor of P, and that would give us a formula for the future interest. It's A equals P times the quantity 1 plus RT. For most of us, just using this basic formula should be sufficient. We already would know up front how much money we borrowed or invested. We can very quickly calculate the interest rate, and then that future amount is just the sum of the two, principal plus interest. Let's look at another example. Let's suppose that we are going to take a future loan. The loan is going to be for $3,600 out for 3 years, and the rate on the loan is 8% per year. And let's suppose that it's going to be done according to simple interest. Let's find the interest and also the future value of the loan. So starting off, the moment you hear that buzzword simple interest, we should automatically write down our formula. We know that it's I equals PRT. And then from there, just plug in all of the variables. The principal, that's the amount borrowed, that's the $3,600. R, the rate, it's 8%, which as a decimal is going to be 0.08. And then the time in years, it's 3 years, so T is equal to 3. If we simply plug this into our calculator, I would do 3,600 times 0.08 times 3, and that would tell us that we would have earned $864 worth of interest. So that's the interest. To find the future amount, that's A. We just take the principal, we add to it the interest. The initial amount borrowed was the $3,600. We computed the interest as $864. And so the future amount of the loan is going to be the sum of those two. That should be $4,464. So if you were to go to a bank or an institution, and let's suppose that you get this loan, they give you that $3,600, and as a right to borrow that money, the total amount that you will need to repay will be the $4,464. So you have to pay them back the amount of money you borrowed, plus you have to pay this interest charge. Let's take a look at another one. In example 3, it says, to meet payroll during a down period, a United Ceramics Incorporated needed to borrow $2,000 at 4% simple interest for 3 months. Let's find the interest. Okay, so we read the problem again. We hear that buzzword simple interest. So automatically our mind should be going to, okay, I know the formula. That's going to be I equals PRT. And then once we identify that, we want to plug in our variables. But we do have to be a little bit careful here. The principal is obviously $2,000. That's how much we're borrowing. The annual interest rate is that 4%. We know that's going to be 0.04. But remember, time has to be in years. If I just plug in this number 3 into the problem, that would indicate that they were borrowing the money for 3 years, when in fact they're only borrowing it for 3 months. So we have to convert this from months to years. 3 months is what fraction of a year? Well, we know that 1 year is 12 months. So what we would need to do essentially is we need to take the number of months and divide it by 12 to convert it to years. So that would be 0.25 years. Okay. They put it in as the fraction 3 over 12, but it's going to be 0.25. Now that we have that number, we can go ahead and multiply it out. Principal times rate times time in years would give us an interest fee of $20. So the total interest is $20. Let's take a look at another example. They say Admiral Chauffeur Services borrowed $600 at 9% simple interest for 1.5 years to repair a limousine. Let's find the interest, the future value, as well as the monthly payment they would have to make if they're going to be repaying their loan monthly. So the first two should be pretty straightforward. We know how to calculate interest. If it's simple interest, it's going to be I equals PRT, and it is simple interest because they do tell us that in the problem. P is going to be 600. R is 9%, so that's going to be 0.09. And the easiest way to use the 1.5, you can put that into your calculator. That's just simply going to be 1.5. So this is 1.5. Let's multiply it out. So P times R times t, and that would give us $81. So the amount of interest this limousine company would need to pay is going to be $81. That means that the future amount of the loan, A, is going to be equal to the principal plus the interest. They borrowed $600 that they have to pay back. They also have to pay the interest fee. So in total, this company has to pay $681 back. The last part they want to know is, well, what is the monthly payment going to be? Well, if you remember, we just saw a moment ago in the previous problem, to go from months to years, we had to divide the number of months by 12. If we want to figure out how many months we're going to make payments on, then we have to work backwards. We would multiply the number of years by 12, and that would tell us how many months. Remember, we're borrowing this money for 1.5 years. 1.5 times 12 should give us 18. And it does. So that tells us that they're going to be borrowing the money for 18 months. We know the total amount they have to pay, and if we're splitting it evenly according to monthly payments, then we are divide that by 18. So if we do 681 divided by 18, this tells us that our monthly payment would be about $37.83. So if they pay the $37.83, they will repay the entire future value of the loan in exactly 1.5 years. Let's take a look at another example. They say that Philips Health and Beauty Spa is replacing one of its workstations. The interest on a loan secured by the spa was $93.50. The money was borrowed at 5.5%. Buzzword here, keyword simple interest. Find the principal. Again, my advice is if you hear that buzzword simple interest, automatically go ahead and write out your simple interest formula. It's I equals P RT. What makes this one a little bit different is we don't know the principal. So if that's going to be our unknown, let's just let that be the variable P as it normally is. What do we know? We know the interest is $93.50. We have P. We know the rate is 5%, which would be 0.055. And we know that we're borrowing the money for 2 years. So if we plug everything that we know into the formula, then we just have one variable that we need to solve for P, which is like we did in one of the earlier sections. I can take and multiply these two numbers together because they're already on the same side. 2 times 0.055 would give me 0.11. So we know that 93.50 would be equal to 0.11 times P. And then, as we saw in the equation section, in order to get the P by itself, we would need to divide both sides by 0.11. Divide by 0.11. These will cancel, and what we get is P equals to 93.50 divided by 0.11, and it would be 850. So the principal, or the original amount of money borrowed, would have been $850. Let's take a look at another one. They say that R&S Furnace Company invested $15,250 for 10 years and received $9,150 in simple interest. What was the rate of that investment? So here, notice they're asking for a rate. If we want to find R, let's just leave it as a variable R. we're still at this section working with simple interest, so it's still that I equals PRT. So we copy down the formula, and let's plug in everything that we know, and the things that we don't know, i.e. the rate this time, we can just leave with the variable R. So we know how much they invested. That's going to be the principal amount. So the principal is $15,250. We don't know R. I'm going to leave it like that. We know that it was borrowed for 10 years, so T is 10. And the amount of interest they received was $9,150. This gives us an equation where we can solve for R. So it's 9,150 is equal to, I can at least multiply these two numbers together. That gives us 152,500 times R. And then the next step to get R by itself, we would need to divide both sides by this coefficient. So divide both sides by that 152,500. Again, the whole idea is on the left-hand side, these things cancel. And so we're going to get R equals, if I take 9150 and divide it by 152,500, we would get an R value of 0.06. And that is correct. That is our rate. But remember, if we're stating it, typically it's given as a percentage. So we want to convert from decimal to percent. That would involve sliding the decimal spot 2 places to the right, and we would report a rate of 6%. So the rate on this problem would have been 6%. Again, the best way to answer these, and we really should be doing this in order to be proper, these are real world worded questions. So our answers should kind of match that context in that setting, which means we should be giving real world worded answers. Again, complete sentence form, explain it to, like, if you're presenting it to a boss or a coworker. We would say that the interest paid on the investment was 6%.